Everything was fine until 1963, like when I was 6 years old. My oldest sister, Ann, asked me to ride bicycle with her, and I was on the handlebars, and we were riding around, actually in St. Louise parking lot, and this is just as hard as everything else. We lost control. We fell, and she hit her head and died a couple days later. And I'm there trying to wake her up. And I guess that's why I've always had, and I've been diagnosed with PTSD, but back then it was called shell shock. My parents were way involved with the church, so we were always involved. We lived right across the street. I mean, you could walk across the street and hit the school and everything. Can't remember going to church when I was in kindergarten or whatever, but then I started first grade there, and it was shortly thereafter that things began to happen. There was more than me involved. That was the big thing about it, because it was a 3-level house that was just right by the church. And you walked in, and when we used to go there were multiple boys. I can't remember how many. There could be 10, 15, 20 of us. And we were all sitting there, and a nun would come down the stairs with a child, let him out the door, and then she would call your name, and she would lead you up to Father Lavelle's room. And the first time I went to Father Lavelle's room, he was lying in bed. And he said, "Take off your pants and underwear and pull up your shirt." Because I thought it was just going to be a beating, because that was normal at the church, and a spanking. And he got out of bed, and his totally nude, and spanked me and playing, and he did that numerous times. And then it was my turn to go out. The nun would lead you out, and she'd call another person, and when it was just an ongoing process. I mean, I was even have to be in bed with him. He'd put his arms around me, and I'd have to lay next to him, and he'd play around with me, and yeah, it was constant. My parents were so involved, and something like that as a young kid, who are you going to tell? And are they going to believe you? I mean, that's just something you don't discuss as a 7, 8, 9-year-old. And I felt like that the whole of my life. I wasn't a big church fan, to be honest, but I had no choice because my parents were so involved. I had to go to church until I was pretty much 17, 18 years old. Because again, my parents were so involved, and we were, lived right across the street until I think it was 74. I think we moved out of that house finally. Basically what brought this thing together was when COVID hit. I replayed the whole thing in my mind, and then I started looking around where it happened in the parking lot by the church and by Father Lavelle's house and the priest's house. And then just things started coming out of my mind, and I'm going, hold it a second. And I started thinking about what actually happened with me and other things in my childhood. That was a big thing. I held it to myself for years. I don't think anybody goes out and goes, "Hey, you know what? This is what happened to me as a childhood." That's something you just don't discuss. I thought about it, and I went online and looked for lawyers in Seattle, in the Seattle area, and that's when I found the lawyer. They got to be able to do something about this, even though it's been all these years. We got to expose the church. I hope that more people would come forward, which they have, and, looking into the situation now, Father Lavelle was at another church before St. Louise, but he was accused of the same thing, so he got transferred to St. Louise, did the same thing there, and then he got transferred to another church and did the same thing there. He went to 3 different churches, I found out, and has abused children in all 3 churches. So the church just keeps moving people around, knowing of what's going on. They let it happen and they know it's happening. And they don't do anything about it. I would say bring it forward. As tough as it is, you've got nothing to lose. You've got to let it out. You've got to let it be known. It's devastating, but it also makes you feel a little bit better knowing that it's finally out and about and people know about it. And it makes you feel a little bit better that knowing and realizing that you're not the only one and you're not the only victim. And there's other people out there that need the help too.